Hi, my name is Bill Cole from the Glazer Center, and today we're going to have a video on the new elevation maker in Athena. This is Athena 2011. To access the elevation maker, we're going to go to Athena, Draw, Facade Elevation. This is going to open the facade elevation tool up, and what we have here is your display screen. And up here in the left-hand corner, if you have previously saved an elevation over in administration, it will actually show you the elevation you're on. So if you have already drawn an elevation, you have saved it, it will then show you what elevation you have to be working on. Now, some of the new tools in 2011 with the facade elevation, one of the newer tools is the window tool. You can now click, the dialog box is now active, you can click into an element, and if you click element over here on the field setting, you can now access the window and door tool. And what's new about the window and door tool is in the manager you can actually save the window or door into a library, and you can export this library out, save it out on your server, and reuse these. That's one of the new features of 2011, so you don't have to keep building windows and doors. Now I'm going to start by explaining the tabs at the top. You're going to have the facade tab, and on the facade tab, this controls your outer shell or your outer structure of your facade. Okay, then you go over to the mullion tab, and this controls your vertical spacing of your mullions. Your transoms controls the horizontal spacings of your transoms. Your transoms would be any horizontal mullion. Fields, this controls if you want to put in a knee wall, doors and windows, combine some bays, if you want to adjust or edit anything in here. Your settings, this controls if you want to output a section cut, and how you want your dimension and stuff like that. And then your administration tab. And this gives you the ability to save your elevation out to the library or bring in an elevation that you've already previously saved. Now I'm going to start back at the facade tab, and you'll notice now we've got some pop-out dialogues. If you click these, you can actually open them and close them. And what this is supposed to represent is, we're trying to make it so you can actually do a work through based on the outer part of your frame and the different tasks for doing that. So we're going to start with your raw shell or rough opening. And once again, you can enter a width, and I'll put in 20 feet. You can enter a height, and I'll put in 28 feet. And the other thing that's different about this is you can now put a slanted top or a rake top on the left or the right just by clicking left or right and entering what it is. Okay. Same thing with, height left, height right. You can put in 26 feet. Now, the other thing you can do is if you click arch line, you can actually do a half aligned arch. One of the other new features is if you want to put an arch in, you just enter in the rise of the arch, and it'll put an arch in for you. Now, anytime you see this little arrow in Athena, it means you can actually access the drawing to pick. So if I wanted to, for my height, if I wanted to access the drawing and pick 2 points, you just click that. Once again, you can pick 2 points to get that height. I'll bring this back to 20 feet. Okay. Oops. There, 28 feet. Okay, so that's anytime you see a little arrow, you can access it. Now, once you get your rough opening set, how you want your elevation to look, once again, I'll do the rise of the arch. You go on to division, and division is you can enter the number of verticals, number of horizontals. So I'll actually put in 6 verticals, and I'll put in 7 horizontals. It doesn't really matter what you put in here because you can add more verticals and horizontals later on. But if you know the number, it's always good. You can do a continuous head. So if you're doing an arch, you can make the arch go continuous. And you can actually miter to the left and miter to the right. You can't see it very well, but it actually mitered them corners. Okay. You can also do a continuous sill. And you can do an inset. So if you put in 6 inches laterally, raise your horizontal 6 inches off the floor. Once again, if you had a regular sill, you can miter the left, or if you have a sill transom, I mean, you can actually miter the left and miter the right. Okay. Now, gap, this is your rough opening. If you put in whatever you want for rough opening, you can do an all equal, or you can do it different if your sill was 0.5. Once again, you can access the drawing for that point. And if you go to settings and you hit the drop down form, you can actually see your rough opening here, and you can actually display that. Okay. Now on the wall junction profile, what this allows you to do, and we won't do it on this, but you can actually, if you click top, you can actually put in a head receptor, and you can have the width of the head receptor, which would be 2 inches, your frame outlet, how past the frame, how far, like an 1/8 inch past the front of the frame you want to stick out, the depth of the overall frame. So if you had a 6 inch frame, you put in 6 inches, and the projection of the weather size. So if you had an 1/8 inch on the front, 1/8 inch on the back. You can also do a left and right receptor, and you can also do a subsill. So if you click sill, you can actually put a subsill in. Okay. And this is all the same. That means anything you put in will be all the same. Okay. Now, joint seam is if you have a splice joint, say at 24 foot, you can actually put that splice joint in, and you can put in more than one splice joint. So if you had a 3-story building, you could actually keep putting in splice joints. Same thing with your head. If you're running a subsill, you can put a splice joint in, and your sill, you can put a splice joint in. Now, once again, if you wanted to put a gap here, if you go over to settings and you go to calculation, here on the transom with the T-butt joint, and you've got an I-butt joint, which would be intermediate mullions, and then you've got sill and transom. If you put in whatever the thickness of your joint seam is, it'll actually add that there. Okay. Actually, this would be on the I-butt joint. This would be they call an I-butt joint. So I'm actually going to put a 1/2 inch in here. I'm actually going to gap my verticals. Once again, if you wanted to show your horizontal and vertical sections you just click these. It'll actually show your horizontal and vertical sections as you go. Okay. I don't show mine that way. It actually shows my elevation bigger. Okay, now I'm going to go over to my mullion tab, and this controls my vertical properties and my spacings. And the first thing I'm going to hit is properties. And here I've got intermediate and outer mullions. So if I click outer mullions, I have all equal. If I uncheck this, I can control the size of my outer mullions and the size of my intermediate mullions if they're different. If I do all equal, they'll all be the same. And here I would put the width of my profile. So if I had a 2.5 inch profile, the depth of my profile, and this is important for your section cuts. And whatever your infill inset is, or in other words, your glass bite, and you can change the inset on your verticals and your horizontals differently, and you can change independent verticals, the inset separately. Okay, and if you're going to do an SSG, you would check this. Now the axis tab, this would actually allow you to space your verticals based off a running dimension. In other words, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay. Now the other thing it does too is it allows you, if you right click in this one here, it allows you to lock that specific vertical in that position. So if you had a door that was specified at this location, you could actually right click and lock that doorway. Okay. Now the one thing to remember, the minute you lock a vertical, like I locked this one, if I go to even these out, it'll even everything on this side and then everything on this side. Okay. Now the other option you have is differing. If you check this, you can actually click any vertical and you can change the width of that vertical. So I'll just do it. I'll exaggerate it to 6 inches, and you'll notice I got a 6 inch vertical now. You can actually change the depth and the infill inset or the glass bite on